Okay, this video is to help you review your solving equations for your quiz. And what was I going to say? Oh, this is just a review of things that we did last time and a little bit of new stuff. So on the first one, this is a proportion. So when we have a proportion, it's two fractions that equal to each other. And the way we solve a proportion is by cross multiplying. So on this one, I'm going to have to take 2 times m plus 3, and it's going to equal m times m minus 3. So when I distribute, I get 2m plus 6 equals m squared minus 3m. Well, I don't have any like terms on either side that I can add together, but I see that it is m squared, meaning that it is quadratic. So to solve it, I'm going to have to set it equal to 0, and I want to keep my, m squared positive. I always want to keep that squared term positive. So I have 0 equals m squared minus 5m minus 6. So now I'm going to factor it. My two numbers that multiply to -6 and add to 5 would be -6 and 1. So when I solve, m equals 6 and -1. Okay, the next one, number 2, is a proportion as well. So what I'd like you to do so that you're more prepared for your quiz is to pause the video, work number 2, and then start the video back up again and see if you got it right. Okay, if you tried number 2, you're going to have to cross multiply. And when you do that over here on the x plus 5, x minus 2, remember you're distributing. So you have to multiply all 4 terms. Combine like terms, it's quadratic, set it equal to 0, and factor. Okay, let's look at the next one. Number 3. Now this one is different than the ones above because now this one has more than more than 2 fractions. So we can't set it equal to each other. It's not a proportion. So in this one, we're going to clear the fractions. So we have to look at the denominators. My only denominators are 5, 3, and x. So my least common multiple would be 15x. So I'm going to multiply every term by 15x. Now, the idea with this is to clear the fraction. So here, the x's cancel, and 5 and 15 reduce. So I get 3 times 3, which is 9. Over here, the x's don't cancel, but the 3 and 15 reduce. So I have 2 times 5 times x, which would be 10x. Over here, the x's cancel, and I have -4 times 15, which is -60. Now I can solve. It doesn't have an x squared, so I know it's linear. So I'm going to put the x's on one side and the numbers on the other. And then I'm going to divide by 10. And we can leave it as an improper fraction, and that's the way it should be unless it is reduced. Okay, pause the video and try number 4 on your own and see if you can get the correct answer. If you tried number 4, you should have gotten the least common multiple was 4. And then the first fraction, the 4 cancels, the next one, nothing cancels, and the next one it reduces to 2, and then you can solve your equation. Okay, let's try another one where we don't have, and if I'm going too fast, remember, you can always pause the video. Next one, we don't have numbers in it, but we have an expression, and the only expression we have is x plus 7. So we're going to multiply each term times x plus 7. On the first one, the x plus 7's cancel, so I'm left with -7. On the next one, nothing cancels, so I'm going to have to distribute, and that gives me 6x plus 42. On the last one, the x plus 7's cancel, and I just get x. Okay, first step is always to combine like terms. -7 and 42 is 35 equals x. So I'm going to subtract, oh, I don't want to subtract x because then I have nothing on that side. I want to subtract 6x from both sides. It's linear. X is on one side, numbers on the other. So I get -5x equals 35. Divide by -5, and x equals -7. Now, Once we get to the problems that are not proportions, we need to start checking our answers for extraneous solutions. Extraneous solutions are any number that make the denominator 0. If I plug -7 into the fraction in the bottom, -7 plus 7 is 0. So this answer is extraneous. So even though the work shows that it's -7, when you plug it in, it doesn't actually work. So there's no good solutions for this problem. So there's no real solutions. But I still view this on the quiz. I'd want you to write -7 and then mark extraneous to it so I can see that you did the work. Okay, pause the video and try number 6. Okay, number 6, you're multiplying everything by x minus 9. So in the first one, nothing cancels, so we have to distribute the -5. The next one, the x minus 9 cancels, and same with the last. It's a linear equation, so I combine like terms, put all the x's on one side and the numbers on the other, and then solve. And when I solve, I get 9. But if I plug 9 into the denominator, 9 minus 9 is 0, and I can't divide by 0, so that makes the 9 an extraneous solution. Okay, let's go to the back of your worksheet. Let's take a look at number 7. Okay, number 7, my least common multiple, still easy to find, is x plus 4. So I'm going to multiply each term times x plus 4. Okay, on the first one, nothing cancels. So when I distribute, x times x is x squared plus 4x. Over here, whoops, nothing, the x plus 4's cancel, but be really careful because there's a minus here. And remember, when you're subtracting, you have to subtract the whole numerator. So I'm going to change this minus to a plus, and then it's going to be -x and -2. Of -x and -2 equals, over here, the x plus 4's cancel, and I just get 2. So first step should always be to combine like terms. Okay, now I see that it's quadratic. I know it's quadratic because it has an x squared. So I'm going to set it equal to 0. When I do that, I get x squared plus 3x minus 4 equals 0. When I factor it, my two numbers would be 4 and -1. So when I solve, I get -4 and +1. Now I need to check. If I plug -4 into that denominator, it's going to give me 0. So that is why 4 is, oh shoot, 4 is extraneous, okay? Because if I plug it in, -4 plus 4 is 0. That doesn't work. But over here, when I plug in the 1, it works. Okay, pause your video and try the next one. Let's see if I can get this back on track here. My writing got shifted, so it got a little funky. Okay, I'm going to rewrite this so you can see it. On this one, I've got to multiply everything times x plus 7. Okay. So on the first one, nothing cancels, so I'm going to distribute. On the next one, these cancel, but because it's minus, I'm going to change this to a negative and that to a negative. Got to get everything changed because I'm subtracting that whole numerator. Over here, I've got to distribute. So then I'm going to get my work and combine like terms, see that it's quadratic, set it equal to 0, and then I can factor it and get my two answers. If I plug in 9 or -6 in here, that's not going to make it 0. Neither one are extraneous. Both solutions work. It's very possible you're going to get no extraneous solutions, but you've got to check every time because you don't know if something will be extraneous or not extraneous. Okay, let's take a look at this next type. We didn't do ones like this last time. So on your quiz, there'll not be one like 9, 10, or 11, but there'll definitely be one like it on the test. So if we look at the denominators, I've got an x minus 2 and I've got an x. When you do the least common multiple, you're not combining things together, but everything has to be represented. So that is going to be my least common multiple. These are not the same thing because this is a group and that's an individual. Those are different. So my least common multiple has to represent all of that. So in the first fraction, the x minus 2 cancels, giving me x squared. Here, the x cancels, so I have to distribute, and I get plus 9x minus 18. On this one, it cancels, so I get negative x times x, which would be negative x squared. There's no like terms, but it's quadratic, so I'm going to set it equal to 0. So I'm going to add x squared to both sides. So that's going to give me 2x squared plus 9x minus 18 equals 0. So now when I go to factor it, I know I have 2x and x with 18. I can have 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. I'm going to start with 3 and 6 and see what that does. This gives me 3x, and that gives me 12x, which could get me to 9 if the 12 is positive. So those are my answers. So when I solve, 2x minus 3 equals 0, and x plus 6 equals 0. So over here, add the 3 and divide by 2, so I get positive 3 halves and negative 6. Neither one of those will make the denominator 0, and so they're both good answers. Neither is extraneous. All right, let's try this again for number 10. To find the least common multiple, just like you did when you were adding and subtracting, you've got to factor the denominator. So to factor it, I'm going to take out an x, and I'm left with x minus 3. Now I know my least common multiple is going to be x times x minus 3, because everything needs to be represented. You're not going to combine them. You're going to represent everything. So on the first fraction, the x minus 3 cancels, so I have 9x times x, which is 9x squared. Here, nothing cancels, so I have to multiply 1 times x minus 3. Well, 1 times x is just x, and now I'll just distribute the x. So that gives me x squared minus 3x. Here, everything cancels, and I just get 1. Okay, combine like terms first. When I combine like terms, I see that it's quadratic, so I'm going to set it equal to 0. And now I've got to factor it. When I factor it, I can do 10 and 1, or I can do 2 and 5. And either one can work. 2 and 5 is most likely, but that does not mean that 10 and 5 wouldn't work. So I'm going to have 2x and 5x. The only way I can get 1 is 1 and 1. So that's easy to check. This gives me 5 and 2, which I could definitely get negative 3 if the 5 was negative. So I know those work. So when I solve, here I'm going to add 1 and divide by 2. So x is 1/2. Here I'm going to subtract 1 and divide by 5. So it's negative 1/5. But again, if I plug those into my denominators, I don't know what I'm going to get, but I know it's not 0. So it can't be extraneous. Okay, pause the video one last time and see if you can do the last one on your own. Okay. This got a little wonky, so I will erase it. Sorry, my screen shifted. My least common multiple, I got to factor that. I get x and then x plus 1 when I factor out. So my least common multiple is x times x plus 1. Okay, now in the first one, nothing cancels out. So I'm going to take 1 times x, which is x, and then I have to distribute the x. So that's how I got the x squared plus x. Here, x plus 1 cancels out. So 5 times x is 5x squared. Here, all of this cancels out, so I just get 5. So then, combine like terms, set it equal to 0. I know we want 2 and 3 to work, but in this case, it doesn't. It's going to be 6 and 1. And when I do that, I get 5/6 and negative 1. But if I plug in negative 1, it's extraneous. They won't always have an extraneous answer, but you got to check for it every single time. Now remember, 9, 10, and 11 won't be on the quiz, but you will have one like that on your test.